This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your hosts, Radio Joe Hughes and the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Good day wherever you're listening from, and welcome to IAQ Radio episode 462. It's Friday, June 2nd, 2017, and this week we welcome Larry Zarker, the CEO of the Building Performance Institute, and Joe Medosch of the Energy and Environmental Consulting, LLC. We're going to talk a little bit about the Healthy Home Evaluator program and the Building Performance Institute, and looking forward to a great show. Before we get started, let's thank our marquee sponsors.
IAQ Radio marquee sponsors are John Don Products, where restoration and abatement contractors shop. Visit them at jondon.com. That's JONDON.com. Healthy Indoor Magazine, a free online digital magazine for industry professionals and consumers. Subscriptions are available at IAQ.net. Legends Environmental Insurance, the experts in insurance for environmental consultants and contractors for over 20 years at legends-enviro.com. That's legends-enviro.com.
And last but not least, please visit the IAQ Training Institute website for the most current dates for the training you trust at IAQtraining.com. Let's turn it over to the Z-Man for today's IAQ Radio trivia question.
And now you can win a cool prize. It's time for the IAQ Radio trivia question. Be the first to correctly answer. Simply email your answer to czlotnick@cs.com. Or if listening live, just text your answer from your computer. And now, here's the Z-Man with this week's IAQ Radio trivia question.
Hello, everybody. The answer to our last trivia question is the well building standard focuses on the people in the building and was provided first by Doug Conan, Aerotech Environmental, Dayton, Ohio. The IQ Radio trivia question for today, Friday, June 2, 2017, has been sponsored by Ideas, the solution chemistry company, creating unique solutions to odor removal, surface cleaning, and decontamination problems. Now for today's IQ Radio trivia question. What is home performance? Back to you, Joe.
Thank you, Cliff. Okay, today's guests, Larry Zarker and Joe Medosch. Larry is the CEO of the Building Performance Institute, the professional standards setting and credentialing organization for both the weatherization and home performance contracting industries. He oversees their national network of over 12,000 certified professionals and the BPI GoldStar contracting companies. He helped found and served on the board of directors of Efficiency First, the trade association for America's home performance workforce, and prior to working at BPI, he worked for nearly 20 years with the National Association of Home Builders Research Center and was the vice president of marketing for over a decade, serving both the new home and remodeling sectors. And then we've got Joe Medosch. Joe's the owner of Energy and Environmental Consulting, LLC, and he's the executive director of the Healthy Home Environment Association. He participated in the development of the Building Performance Institute's HHE credential, the Healthy Home Evaluator credential, and is a Healthy Homes Master Trainer. He's got a whole bunch of BPI certifications, and he's been working on the Train the Trainer program, too, for the BPI Healthy Home Evaluator program. And let's get started with Larry. Do we have you on the line?
Yes, I'm on.
All right, great to have you. And I'm wondering if you can update listeners a little bit on the activities at BPI. You've got this new program going. How many certification programs are there?
All in all, we have about 18 certifications. So we're a 23-year-old national nonprofit organization formed in New York, and we focus on developing standards and certifying the workforce.
How many standards do you have?
About the same number. So it's not a one-for-one alignment. In some cases, we have certifications that don't have one of our standards behind it, but for the most part, the standards and the certifications align.
I see. And Joe, why don't you, do we have you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for
right.
having us today. This is a great opportunity.
Welcome, Joe. It's great to have you. We've met a couple times now, and it's great to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about your involvement with BPI.
I've been certified for quite a while. In fact, I have to redo my certification tomorrow. So it's a phenomenal resource and organization that's tried to organize everybody from HVAC contractors to home performance to people that can do code compliance to really what I think will be the legacy is actually the new Healthy Home Environment certificate. So this is definitely something that has been embedded in a lot of things that we do and now actually has its own place in the industry. And
Larry, before we get into a little more detail on that, give us a little overview of the home performance industry. Where is it now? And now, I guess we use the term home performance. I noticed in your bio you had weatherization and home performance, and are they kind of separate now, or tell us a little bit more about that?
I really see the two as being the same. Programmatically, in state and utility programs, there's a difference between market-based programs and low to moderate income weatherization programs, but the building science is the same across the board. And in terms of where I think the industry is headed, we got into this situation in the 1970s with the Arab oil embargo, where we had gas lines, and we responded with new public policy to try and end our dependence on foreign energy sources. We created a national speed limit for cars, and we created incentive programs for saving energy and reducing our dependence on foreign energy sources. But with those incentives came regulatory requirements for payback, and hence a series of cost-effectiveness tests. And what we're learning from the contractors is that these cost-effectiveness tests are all of the benefits of home performance, but they don't allow for non-energy benefits, including comfort, health, safety, and durability. And the contractors are telling us that comfort, health, and safety are the key drivers for their customers. So we see that perhaps instead of focusing on energy efficiency as the driver, we should respond to customer concerns about health and safety in their home.
I see. So you're moving toward that kind of a more comprehensive approach, I guess.
That's right.
And Joe, how do you fit into this? What's your background with respect to, were you a contractor providing these services in the past? And I understand now you do training courses, and you've got a little industry association we want to talk about a little bit later. But tell us a little more about your background with BPI and the types of programs they have.
Yeah, no, I used to live in Chicago, and I was a contractor, a maintenance guy, so I was a jack of all trades and got to learn a lot from, structural stuff to plumbing, electrical, and just kept growing from there. And, became a home inspector. I did IAQ assessments. I was a CIE and certified to be a mold evaluation. So my goal was the more diverse you were, the more options you had to survive in strange economies. So, and then I stumbled into BPI as a governing body, and it's one thing to know something, it's another to be certified that you know something. So I got involved with BPI many years ago and kept trying to grow my credentials and my knowledge based on what they provided. And then Larry had the concept of the Healthy Home Evaluator, and then I really got heavily involved in the things that BPI and Larry wanted to develop.
I see. And Larry, what other things do the contractors out there tell you with respect to where we're headed as far as a nation in in developing more healthy and energy efficient homes? Is that starting to take off?
Well, the contractors are a wide group. So some of them are in HVAC, some of them are in insulation, some of them are in installation of windows, and some of them are remodelers. And their cycle of the seasonality is different. In HVAC, you have these extremes of summer and winter, and then you have down periods in between. And one of the things that the successful home performance contractors have told us is that they can minimize the seasonality swings by doing home performance and offering whole house solutions and not just responding to the extremes of the season. So that is one of the benefits of home performance contracting.
And could you, either one of you, maybe describe for listeners the difference between just a weatherization and a full home performance contracting, upgrade to a home? Are we talking about air sealing, insulation, but also a whole new mechanical system? Are we dealing with duct work, tightening up that duct work, and doing that in a more comprehensive fashion?
I think that all those were accurate statements, but the difference between weatherization and home performance is that one is actually, a market rate, private individuals paying for these. The other one is actually state-funded or nationally funded resources that go to what gets done. That's usually weatherization is based upon low-income families. So, for those folks, their energy bills are a high percentage of their income. So you may do the similar things for both homes. One is just more limited by what are available funds, and the other one's only limited by what the homeowner themselves want to invest in.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that too. I view what home performance contractors do differently than other contractors in the home services industry is that they actually pay attention to customer concerns at the kitchen table and talk to them about what's going on in their house, what kinds of issues they have with perhaps asthma, other health conditions, and then they identify problems and they work with diagnostic testing to find solutions. They're not there to sell products. They don't start with, you need new windows or you need air sealing. They're actually identifying where the problems are, and then from a systems perspective, trying to figure out what's the path toward getting that fixed and improving the quality of the life of people who live there.
And I take it you guys see this as the future of that industry. I mean, are the weatherization programs are they dying out a little bit, or are they going to be increasing here? What's the future on those?
When you talk about low-income weatherization, the new administration has zeroed out those programs, but my view is that there is a lot of support for that at the local level. There are projects going on in every congressional district, and I don't see this as something that will get defunded. I think it is something that is necessary. There's been 7 million homes that have been upgraded through the National Low-Income Weatherization Assistance Program, and there are many more homes that need that kind of work performed.
So do you see maybe the funding mechanism changing, Larry? Maybe going from the federal to a more regional type of funding mechanism?
Well, there's only so many requirements you can force down the throats of states. So there is, I think there's a national role for weatherization assistance, and that it should come from the federal government. It's not clear to me that there's some regional body or state bodies that could pick that up.
How do the utilities fit into this? Wasn't there a pot of money that they put away over the years for these types of programs, or did I not understand that right?
Well, certainly, we've worked with about 120 state and utility programs over the years, and they're the ones who provide incentives to do the work. And you know, what I brought up earlier is that they have regulatory environments that can kind of constrain what they can invest in. And it's mostly about cost effectiveness of energy payback. And so it doesn't necessarily take into account the non-energy benefits, the things like health and safety. But there is a new resource value framework that came out of the Home Performance Coalition, the National Efficiency Screening Project, that outlines a set of principles and best practices for screening for energy efficiency. And it's really time to put balance into the criteria for evaluating cost effectiveness. That includes things like days away from school or days away from work, or the cost of emergency room visits, or the cost of staying over in the hospital. Those are valuable too.
You know, we had a show, I want to say less than a month ago, with Ellen Tone, and she had helped put together a document, I can't remember the name of it, that helped to lay out the other benefits, in addition to, you know, the fact that you save some money on energy, but also the other benefits you're talking about with respect to home performance, that, you know, you'll get better health outcomes and more comfortable conditions for people in the homes. And I think that's one of the first documents that really laid that out in that way. Are you? I can't think. Either one of you know the name of it?
Well, I don't have the name in front of me, but I know that Ellen was involved in two big studies along with the National Center for Healthy Housing. One for DOE, the Home Performance with Energy Star program, looking at health outcomes that are delivered from energy efficient upgrades. And then the E for the Future actually sponsored another project looking at what we know in terms of how energy efficiency and health upgrades are synergistic.
That's the one we talked about more than the other, was the E for the Future paper, and we'll get that up on the website again as a part of the blog for this show. All right, let's get a little more into the Healthy Home Evaluator, that credential. Larry, let's start with you. What kind of was the impetus? What led to the development of that credential?
So BPI's motto has always included in it comfort, health, safety, durability, and energy efficiency. But our standards and certifications focus primarily on energy efficiency and a little bit on combustion safety and gas leak testing related to health and safety, but not broader other health and safety issues. And so contractors and other industry professionals convinced us that health and safety concerns in homes should be a focus for BPI. So together with the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, we pulled together a team of subject matter experts and built the Healthy Home Evaluator credential. These subject matter experts developed the scope of what the credential is, along with the certification scheme, and actually the test itself. Joe was one of the people who was on that subject matter expert team. And just for your information, any information that you want to get on the Healthy Home Evaluator is available at bpi.org/HHE.
And I understand Kevin Kennedy was very involved as well, and we've had Kevin on, I'll bet 5 or 6 times over the years with Children's Mercy Hospital. Joe, you want to add a little bit to what your thoughts are with respect to how this all came about and where it's headed?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that at least my concept is that many people have been doing healthy home assessments every time they go to a home, no matter what contractor they are. They're observing conditions that they realize aren't the best for the homeowner, but never really understood that these are things that should be added to the report or should be reducing their liability and making sure they're responsible to the homeowner. So if you've ever been to a home and had, loose treads or loose handrail or trip hazards or rodents or signs of pests, those are all healthy home criteria and conditions. So I think we've been doing these kind of things. We just haven't really understood that they should be part of any of our reports. And I think there's an underlying element that will be integrated into a variety of assessments. And we started with this concept of a Healthy Home Evaluator to do a Healthy Home assessment. And I personally predict that eventually this will become more integrated into a variety of intensive assessment or inspections that people actually do. It'll just be a given that you should be making these kind of comments and recommendations to your clients.
And Larry, let's clarify, is this a certification or is it something slightly different?
Well, so we started out thinking this would be a micro-credential, a certification that had a prerequisite. But by the time we were through, we realized it wasn't a micro-credential. It's a full certification that has prerequisite requirements. So the scheme committee determined that the Healthy Home Evaluator builds on skill set of at least one of the following certifications: the building analyst, the energy auditor, the quality control inspector, or the multifamily building analyst. So these are people who are comfortable with diagnostic testing. They're comfortable in crawl spaces and attics and wet basements. They understand the house as a system. What they're doing now is going a level up to understand the environmental risk assessment process.
And do you...
Can I add to that, Joe?
Please.
Yeah, so, my background was as a CIE and, doing those types of evaluations, and I would regularly go into homes that had, suspect mold, learn to find out that, yes, it is mold after testing it in the attic, in the crawl space. These are very common things that homeowners are calling, professionals to come out and evaluate. And my training and all the other, my mentors and other people would be like, well, that's not an IAQ, indoor air quality issue. That's a building defect, all right? That was a common standard, result of most of the people that I spoke with. That's just how IAQ thought of it. That's not an indoor issue. The attic is not part of the indoor area. But as a building scientist, as a BPI credential professional, we know that's not the case, that the attic and the crawl spaces are usually more significantly connected than we ever want to admit. So if you really want to find out how connected they are, get a blower door and find out easily how connected the attic is and the crawl space is to the house. And now you realize that those conditions are a major impact upon the occupants. So I kind of got into energy at the same time as I was seeing some of these issues and realized that, this is wrong. These things are connected and I can prove it. So I shifted from IAQ, which has a high liability for some things, to energy, and I'm now coming back. So I have a full circle as to what we can actually do with IAQ and full building assessments. And not just to go up and say, oh, you have a problem, but building analysts and building scientists concepts tell you, why do you have this problem? Why do you have high moisture in your house? Where's the moisture coming from? And try to give some guidance as to not just clean this up by a professional or by the homeowner, but let's figure out that it doesn't come back again. It's a major complaint that you fix something and 6 months later it's back, or the same spring season, this comes back. So we try to make sure that the Healthy Home Evaluator isn't just there to assess this immediate condition, but to find out why it happens and how to make sure they prevent that from reoccurring.
Larry, let's get through the certification part, and then I'll get into a little more detail. Are these third-party accredited certifications, or how does BPI look at that? And if they're not, are you looking at doing that down the road?
So BPI is accredited by ANSI under ISO 17024 as a personnel certification body. And to date, 4 of our certifications, the home energy professional certifications that we developed for DOE and NREL for the National Low-Income Weatherization Assistance Program, they're accredited by ANSI. We follow ANSI requirements on all of our certifications, but it is cost prohibitive for us to run all of our certifications through ANSI. We just don't have the resources to do that. So in the case of the Healthy Home Evaluator, we follow ANSI requirements in all of our procedures. but we don't go for that outside third-party accreditation just because it's prohibitively expensive.
What's the tipping point on that? How many? Let's start with this. How well has the program been received? Are you getting a lot of people interested in the program? I mean, are people? I know you've been doing some train the trainer things, so I don't know if they're actually running courses right now. But how's it being received by your what is it, 12,000 people out there that already have your certifications?
So we had a chicken and egg situation. We didn't have curriculum. We didn't have a certification. There wasn't any real training in this particular area. And the subject matter experts decided, let's build the certification and get it through pilot testing. We had 300 people from the industry take the exam. And so we knew that there was interest there, but then we had to step back and we worked with the Healthy Housing Solutions and with funding from HUD to start to build the curriculum that trainers around the country, we have 130 test centers that do training, that they could then have a curriculum and that they could use. And Joe and Kevin and Rick Hall and others have been very active in doing the trainer throughout the test center network. So we see that the demand will pick up once that these test centers have the trainers ready in their market. But we knew that there was going to be a lag after the initial pilot phase.
And Joe, do you want to add anything there? What's your experience been with people? You're out talking to people all the time. Are they excited about this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are excited about it and trying to figure out how to apply this. How do I add this to my business model, or is there a business model behind it? And I think people are a little gun shy about what it is that how this fits in. So, I think it needs probably about another year for people to start to realize, wow, this is something that I can add to my existing business model or can develop it by itself. I describe it as, if we can go back to like 1995 and you had a computer and there wasn't a lot you could do with it, and people started mentioning the word .com, and suddenly it wasn't but a few years later that everything kind of exploded. I do think that there is a concept and a feeling that's happening where a lot of folks are concerned about their health insurance, they're concerned about their health care, how much is their home impacting that, what can they do to be more preventative, elderly folks, aging in place concepts, people having babies, all these kind of things enter into how much is my home impacting my health and my conditions. And I think there's going to be more of awareness of how this enters the consumer market. And then we're going to open up avenues for more of a business model.
And Larry, going back to what BPI does, do you have plans for developing any kind of standards to go along with this certification in this somewhat, I guess it's a somewhat new arena for you?
We don't currently have any plans to create that standard. When we brought together the subject matter experts, they looked at the standards that are out there and felt that there was sufficient standards in place through ASHRAE, ASTM, National Center for Healthy Housing, that we didn't necessarily need to start with a standard which could take years to pull together, but to reference existing standards in the market and then build this certification. So that's
I'll definitely jump in there for a second.
Go ahead, Joe.
The challenge is that there are not a protocol, as we would describe it, as to how to do a healthy home assessment. And Kevin Kennedy and I are focused on, let's pin this down. Let's actually create a guidance for this new industry or individuals that want to do this. It's our focus to do that. So that's really how the HIA, the Healthy Home Environment Association, came about, was that realizing that there's we now have certified professionals and there's nobody to support them. So this organization is designed to create a variety of support mechanisms, one of which is the protocols. That's actually kind of a long-term. I'm hoping by next spring we have a 1.1 version of protocols, but We also want to come up with a criteria that defines what is a healthy home assessment, similar to what the home inspectors have from ASHI, who's a support body for home inspectors. They've got a 2-page, or it's probably a 4-page guide that just says, here's what a home inspection is and is not, so that the occupant, the client, understands what it is this person should be doing or will not be doing, and it gives everybody a even playing field. So there's right now it's too wide of a market, or what is it that they're doing or not doing. So our goal is trying to give some guidance. You can exceed that, but at least kind of shows what it is that you should be focused on and what will happen at a house, and then bridge upon more protocols and come up with some associate certificates to kind of support the industry and make it more of a trade concept that you would step up from a beginner to a expert.
Okay, we've got to stop and thank our sponsors, and we'll be back. We've got Larry Zarker and we've got Joe Medosch. We're talking about the Healthy Home Evaluator through the Building Performance Institute. We'll be back in 90 seconds with the second half of our show.
IAQ Radio would like to thank our association sponsors. The Indoor Air Quality Association, a nonprofit multidisciplinary organization dedicated to promoting the exchange of indoor environmental information through education and research. Visit them at iaqa.org. Particles Plus, engineers and manufacturers, feature rich particle counters, air quality monitoring, instrumentation, and vacuum pump technology. ParticlesPlus.com. Count on us. Gray Wolf Sensing Solutions, who use advanced sensor software technology and embedded computers to provide superior environmental test instrumentation. Visit them, wolfsense.com. IAQ marquee sponsors are John Don Products, where restoration and abatement contractors shop. Visit them at johndon.com. That's JONDON.com. Healthy Indoor Magazine, a free online digital magazine for industry professionals and consumers. Subscriptions are available at IAQ.net. Legends Environmental Insurance, the experts in insurance for environmental consultants and contractors for over 20 years at legends-enviro.com. That's legends-enviro.com.
Okay, we're back for the second half of our interview. I see some people have lost the connection here and there, and they're coming back in. We've had pretty good luck here, and also want to make sure people know we will have a recording of the show. Everything's gone well on my end, and we've been able to keep everybody else on the line here. Cliff, before I get started, did you have any follow-ups you wanted to ask before I start the second half here?
No, Joe, I think that it's a very important show because we have many listeners that come from, building performance, indoor air quality, home inspection, and so on and so forth. And, some of them are struggling to make a living, and it seems that this is an opportunity for them. So let's just get back and discuss more of it.
Okay, let's talk a little more about the process for getting the credential. There's no experience requirement with respect to doing indoor environmental quality work, or am I missing that?
Wait, can I make one comment?
Go ahead, Joe.
That one of the things I'm trying to change is the dialogue about that Healthy Homes does incorporate IAQ, but that means it's not IAQ, right? So our industry has been so heavily influenced by what IAQ is and how important that is, but a healthy home goes way beyond the concept of IAQ, right? So it has to do a lot with, other like safety conditions or other issues in the house that are IAQ is just really one element. So when you're talking about healthy homes, I think it's important to distinguish the two in terms of how we can apply them. So if you're going to go to a client's house and you talk IAQ, it can be very limiting. But if you're going to talk about healthy homes, it's a much broader perspective as to what it is you're actually able to provide for your client. So it's just a point of clarification.
And I think there's a very good point here about what it is that the assessor is doing. They're conducting environmental risk assessment and informing or communicating those results to the homeowner. They're not saying, we're going to cure Susie's asthma and get her back out on the soccer field. They can't do that. They don't have the ability to solve medical issues. But what I think has been informative from Kevin's experience with Children's Mercy Hospital is that the doctors find that they can't advance the patient's health any further, and they say maybe there's something going on in the home. Could you do an intervention and understand what's going on in that home and report back to us so that we can have a fuller picture? And it's really important that we distinguish that we're not there fixing a health condition of an individual. It's more the environmental risk that is found in the home.
I guess to answer your question, Joe, there is no requirement to have a IAQ background or any other IAQ type of knowledge. In fact, most people come into the Healthy Home Evaluator having none of that. It's somewhat a little intimidating that they're coming in with a building science background trying to learn more about these environmental health risks and impacts. So that's usually the background for most folks that are doing this credential.
I think you guys sort of answered the text question I'm looking at here. The Healthy Home Assessment is not an investigation of health complaints. Are they claiming to be doing a health risk assessment or identify the cause of symptoms? And you guys are saying no, as I understand it. Is that accurate?
I would say yes and no. So if I go to a home and they're telling me that they are having a lot of coughing, sneezing, wheezing issues, all right, then I do need to listen to my client and as part of my assessment to keep that in mind. But I'm not there to just address that one issue for them. And the goal is to always still do a full home assessment, that's a healthy home assessment, and come up with conditions that may be impacting their condition, because you never know. That's one of the underlying elements, is I do not know that your carpet that's 18 years old is directly impacting you, but there's a lot of evidence-based conditions to say that this really could be a common condition for you, or other things that are around there, and always making sure that they've consulted with a medical professional about some of their conditions. So it isn't, I'm not there to play that role. I'm there to find health risks that are in the home that could be impacting these conditions, if that helps define that.
And now, Joe, you had a little background in doing indoor environmental quality investigations, mold inspections, etc. I'm wondering, for those that are coming into the program that don't have that background, they do home performance, they're looking at it in a holistic manner, which I think is a great start, but they maybe don't have that background. Are you working with a mentoring program of any kind, or are you giving these folks resources for people who are maybe more experienced that they can hook up with that could help them when these situations come up that they're just not quite ready for, or they want to hand it off to someone who has more experience? How are you guys handling that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's one of the key things that, again, the organization is going to try to implement. So the Healthy Home Environment Association eventually will have a membership, and it'll be a tiered membership. So one of the higher levels will include a mentorship, and that would be other professionals like Kevin Kennedy, Luke, and other similar associates that mostly Kevin's actually trained, that have given time to help everybody in this industry. So we do feel that the mentorship concept is vital, and sometimes it may be one-on-one, but another avenue is we'll probably just host like a monthly call-in, like tell us what you found at a home, or what are your challenges, what is it you're trying to still figure out, and try and share some pictures, do something that everybody gains from a common knowledge, similar to maybe we'll develop a couple of LinkedIn kind of pages that allow people to say, hey, what is this? And see if we can't give some supporting information that's out there. And it is a huge a role that must be addressed with trying to make sure that this is a successful program.
Larry, did you want to add anything before? I've got another text I want to get to, but do you want to add anything to that?
No, I'm good with that.
Okay.
I did want to respond to what Cliff said about the IAQ professionals, some of them struggling to make a living.
Yes.
People don't buy IAQ, but they are interested in making their homes more healthy. Peter Trost at Energy Circle has been tracking Google search data, and IAQ as a search term over time has been falling off, diminishing pretty steadily, while over the same period of time, healthy housing as a search term has been increasing at an accelerating rate. So if you look at industry sectors like the HVAC industry, they've had a hard time selling IAQ equipment that bolts onto the HVAC system because I think people just see that as another gadget. And what I want to reinforce is that it all starts at the kitchen table. Tell me what's going on in your home, what's going on with your family. Does anyone suffer from asthma? Do you have moisture in different parts of the house? Are there rooms that you can't bring the temperature in the summer or winter? And I think we have to orient ourselves around the customer in their home and not focusing on IAQ.
Larry, you did a great job of leading into this text question I got here, and that is, are you doing, when these guys go out and perform this service as you envision it, you and Joe and the others that developed it, are they going to follow some kind of a checklist or a standard of some type? How do they, when they sit around that kitchen table, as you said, how do they guide that conversation?
Well, I've done many webinars about that, and that's not just a HHE challenge. That's actually a contractor challenge in general. And one of the things that I try to remind contractors is to shut up and listen to your clients, because it's really common that you want to go in and share your knowledge and tell them what you can do and all the things you can do and what you've done, and you never really listened. That your clients will tell you everything you need to know about that house and what they want, and your focus should be resolving what they really want. So that's the first stage of that. And the other part is that we still are developing this checklist and protocol concept. There's a lot of great materials out there, but nothing that's like, this is what, when I get up from the kitchen table, here's what I'm going to go do at your house. And it is my personal goal to have a first stage concept of that in before September, and let that be edited and get a lot of feedback, and that'll grow into protocols. But right now there isn't this really nice checklist unless you develop one yourself as kind of a guideline. And there's some software that we're also trying to reach out to create an indirect protocol based upon the software that will help you do this kind of report, and you don't feel as though I need to rewrite a bunch of stuff that is a common issue, and I find in a lot of homes.
Right, and there are some softwares out there, like Healthy Housing Solutions has one, and Kevin has been working on one, but I think it's important that they at some point have a procedure that they follow. But what we found with building analysts, which is our principal certification for analyzing what's going on in the home, is that those people have a skill set that they follow what they need to do in order to find out where those problems are. And that will develop with the Healthy Home Evaluator as well. And on the website I mentioned earlier, we have what's called the Certification Scheme Handbook. But in that handbook is the full job task analysis of what is expected of the Healthy Home Evaluator. And it's a really nice set of information that you need to know about in order to challenge the exam.
How long is the exam? How many questions?
100 question, 2-hour exam, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's only 50 questions. I thought it was 50.
Oh, yeah. There's 2 forms, so there's 50 questions, and you can have up to 2 hours to do it.
Okay. And I see these other text questions. Give me a minute. I'll get to them. Before I do let's get a ballpark idea. What I know you guys aren't, or maybe Joe, you will be providing these services. A healthy home evaluation. Now we're talking about not just focusing on a mold inspection or not just focusing on a specific indoor air quality concern. You're doing a more comprehensive evaluation of the home. What kind of price range do you guys envision this being within?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
And
I also don't want to give some guidance as to what people should be charging, or that there's conflicts of interest in terms of what Joe said. So it's rare that you're probably going to a home just to do a general healthy home assessment. I mean that's what we all would hope for, but you're being called out for a specific reason, and that actually would probably adjust your price as to what you might think about time frame you may be spending there, including how old is it, how large is it, how many occupants. A few things are going to give you some guidance as to, I'm going to be at this home a little longer, or this actually is a fairly small home with, just a couple living there. So personally, I think that based upon your time and writing a report and what you have to do and your liability, I think a minimum of around $400 is what they should be, you should be charging, and they should expect to get from you. So if you're undercutting that, or you're doing $200, you're losing money, and you're not providing at least a minimum amount of service that your clients need. I personally think it should be closer to $600 in terms of the amount of time you're doing. You are going to pull out some diagnostic tools. Those tools are not cheap, and if you really start evaluating how much money it costs for you to go to a home to do that, those are some minimum costs I think most homeowners would be willing to pay, and some would even be willing to pay more depending on their condition. So my daughter's got asthma issues, and I can't figure out why. Believe me, those parents are willing to pay $600-800 for you to come in and try to give them guidance as to what this is, and that's not including any kind of remediation or corrections. That's just to give them a full risk assessment as to things that could be there. And, of course, trying to send them back to their physician as to what other things they could be giving guidance on.
Yeah, but having said that, I can foresee at some point there could be a forensic level certification above the Healthy Home Evaluator. But we don't have any plans to develop that at this point. And this certification is more referral-based. It's a knowledge test. So the referral is you get to a place where you would recommend bringing in licensed experts for such things as asbestos or mold or lead in paint, those kinds of things. So it's not forensic level. It builds off of the building analyst or the other certifications, and a lot of programs around the country subsidize that initial audit. So you'll find in a state where they'll say the customer pays $100. In my county, we pay $100 for the energy audit. The utility reimburses the contractor on top of that for the rest of the energy audit. Some of the utilities around the country have told us that they plan to add the Healthy Home Evaluator on top of what they're already doing in home performance. So then you look at what's the additional cost above doing the energy audit to add in the Healthy Home Evaluation.
I've got a text question that I want to bring in here. I'm not sure. They're saying, isn't there a conflict of interest, when a contractor installs a remedy, just like with a mold assessor and a mold contractor? Now, people go both ways on that. Some feel like, the dentist tells me I have a cavity and he fills my cavity, and people argue that that's comparing apples and oranges. Have you had that discussion about, when is it a conflict of interest, and how do you handle that?
Well, the fundamental element, like Larry pointed out, is that the Healthy Home Evaluator is not somebody who is trained or has the ability to do the remediation specs. They may give you guidance as to, you have suspect mold on your wall, I recommend you get this type of person. Depending on your state, there's a variety of requirements that are there. This appears to be asbestos-like conditions. I highly recommend you find somebody who's qualified or licensed to test these kind of conditions. So the goal wasn't intended for any of these folks to do the work. But for those that may be already licensed to do that in that state or have those kind of credentials or training, I think it's just a matter of being full disclosure to your clients as to, I found this, my company does actually remediate this or can test for this, and make sure your clients understand a option of whether they should go to somebody else or they trust you to go ahead and do that kind of work. It is also one of the goals of the Healthy Home Environment Association to come up with a code of ethics that addresses those kinds of questions or conditions. And I think it's a matter of like some home inspection concepts that I'm here to inspect your home and your roof looks really bad, but I also can put a new roof on. That I think that's all about our disclosure and giving your clients options of what they decide to do.
How do they? Go ahead.
That's kind of the consultant model. The contractor model, real quickly, I've spent a lot of time with the program in New York State, and they believe in the contractor model that the contractor has skill set, is asked into the home by the individual, and they do a diagnostic test and find out where the problems are and recommend changes that they can actually accomplish or oversee. It's much like when I take my car to the mechanic. They tell me what's wrong and they tell me what it would cost to get it fixed. I say, do it. I don't want to take it down the street and say that my mechanic found this problem, you fix it for me. So I can see there's a role for the consultant. There's also a role for a contractor model.
Yeah, that's a tough question. And when you get more involved in the health side of things as opposed to the home performance side of things, and it seems like you're kind of crossing that boundary there. A lot of people are used to the consultant contractor model. So where one person does the consulting, the other person does the contracting. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just something that you're going to run into. People are going to question it a little bit more because, people are worried that, for instance, with the asbestos world or the lead world, oftentimes there's a separation between those two roles. And the same with mold remediation, at least in some states. So it's going to be interesting to see how that is handled by the Healthy Home Evaluators.
I think that comes into your background as as being a contractor. If you're a IAQ type contractor, you're probably used to this two-tiered process. But home performance folks, as Larry pointed out, they're used to going in and I'm going to set my blower door up and show you how leaky your house is, and that's what I'm going to fix. So right. I think it depends on how you approach this with your client or what the conditions are. So, but air sealing a house doesn't have specific state license requirements besides just being a licensed contractor for many of these applications. But mold, asbestos, radon, all of those have criteria that your state could easily be overseen or have secondary requirements to that now you may be doing a two-tiered scenario.
And you got to pick a side in some of those situations in some states. All right, let's talk about the existing IAQ professionals out there. We've got a lot that listen to this show. Are these newly trained people going to take the place of the existing IAQ professionals, or is there a plan for how we can work these new people into the existing IAQ consulting world out there? I had a text question from the president of the Indoor Air Quality Association. How would that certification help someone like himself, and I would imagine a lot of his members? Can you guys address those topics?
One of the things that, I have a blessing from Larry, and he'll speak up otherwise, but I'm sure that it's really our goal to make sure that the homeowners get a healthy environment that they live in. So that's why Larry started with his ability to focus on a BPI credential, right? We see that there is a higher industry need for a healthy home concept. So one of the things, again, that's why HEA has been developed, is we also want to come up with some associate certificates for basically like real estate professionals or trade technicians who have just a general knowledge about this. We want to come up with something that is a HHEP, which is a Healthy Home Environment Professional, which now works with existing IAQ professionals or home inspectors or other trades that do understand how the building kind of works. So the HHE kind of came with people who understand building science. Let's open their vision to IAQ and other health risks that go along with healthy homes. The opposite is available to say, oh, these people are very aware of some of the health conditions and health risks. Let's open them up and broaden their vision with building science. So it's our goal to come up with a universal type of application that goes beyond BPI so that they're complementing each other. And again, once we have protocols and conditions to say that if you're BPI or if you're a HIA type of certification, you're both doing the same thing at a house. So it isn't our goal to create a second-tier industry. It's to create more professionals to be able to go do this.
Larry, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the building analyst, which is really our bread and butter, is what helps people understand the health of the system. And you know, building science is not rocket science. It's really something that helps with this assessment. So we found that our test centers around the country are now combining the traditional building analyst training with the Healthy Home Evaluator, so that if you don't have building analysts, you can go get that. And it helps then inform your understanding of what's really going on in the home. And having said that, we're looking very seriously at a level below where we are with the Healthy Home Evaluator. Comparable to building analysts, we have something called Building Science Principles, which has an exam which is just a certificate. But it's used by inspectors, realtors, salespeople, appraisers to understand the house of the system. They need to know what a blower door is, but they don't need to know how to use it. And we're thinking of building a Healthy Home Principles reference guide and certificate exam for the inspectors, for realtors who go into the home. And if they find out that someone has asthma, say, you know, perhaps you should get a Healthy Home Evaluator to come in and do an assessment of the home. So full circle, we're trying to build out the not just the Healthy Home Evaluator, but what really gets customers the information they need to make informed decisions.
It isn't my goal of my association to compete with BPI. It's my goal to complement each other. So I work well. Larry's a personal good friend of mine, and it's my goal to make sure that his program is completely successful, and other things that we need in the industry, then the association kicks in to help make sure they're available.
And I think there's other organizations that would look forward to helping you with this as well. I know you're working with the National Center, at least to some degree. Indoor Air Quality Association put up a text here. They'd be interested in working with you on combining some of these areas of practice. And, you know, I think it's something that needs to happen. I've been doing this healthy home stuff for many years now. I've worked with Kevin. We do some courses together, and looking at things in a holistic manner is obviously the future. If they can ever get health insurance to help with this in some way, and I think in some places they are to some degree, I think that could be a real turning point for all of these programs. But I guess we'll see. Before we go, I want to make sure I give you guys a last word. Is there anything you'd like to add that we'd missed? Any final thoughts? Let's start with Joe.
Well, one quick thing is we talked about Ellen Tone, and I can give you the article that she most recently did with some others, and it's Home RX, as an RX prescription.
Yes.
The health benefits of home performance.
That was it.
Definitely a great article.
And it's a good show for those that haven't had a chance. Please listen to that one. We had her on about 3 weeks ago now.
If you're looking for more information, you can go to healthyhomeenvironment.association.org.
healthyhomeenvironmentassociation.org. We'll get that in the blog. Cliff is busy writing away. He will put together a blog, send it to both of you. before we send that out to our listeners next week so we can get your feedback and any corrections. And before we go, Larry, any final thoughts?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having us on today. And secondly, we are very interested in creating a alliance with other organizations. So would very much like to follow up with IAQA and other organizations to see how we can actually make a difference in people's homes.
That's great to hear. And anything else that we missed, guys, before we go? I want to thank both of you. I know I've been trying to get together and do a show on this topic for a little while now, and I appreciate you guys taking the time out to join us on IAQ Radio.
Yeah, I misquoted my address. It's healthyhomeenvironment.org, so apologize.
Okay, we'll get that right. You guys get it right on the blog. We'll put it up. Larry, any final thoughts before we go?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you, Larry Zarker and Joe Medosch, for joining us today. Great discussion about the BPI Healthy Home Evaluator program, and just a little bit on, the holistic approach to home performance and to healthy homes. I think it's the future. We'll continue to follow it here on IAQ Radio. I also want to thank my co-host, the Z-Man. I bet your hand's sore today, Cliff.
It is, but I think we'll have a good blog, Joe.
Very good, Cliff. Thanks you so much, as always, for your help. And to John, you got to have faith. Great job back at the studio there. Next week, we're going to have a Flashback Friday, but then the following week, we'll be at the Violand Executive Summit. We're going to be doing a show with some of the old, what did we decide on there, Cliff? The old timers of restoration, or?
Well, I think the past 30 years,
Past 30 years of restoration. We're going to have a great show. We look forward to having listeners join us live again.
I think what we've learned over the past 30 years.
We've learned over the past, and there's been a lot, hasn't there? It's been a great 30 years in that disaster restoration industry. But please come back and join us next Friday for the next episode of IAQ Radio.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Reel saying thanks for listening.